Your wife has expressed feelings that have left you feeling hurt and confused. After being intimate, she told you that she felt disgusted and friend-zoned you, indicating that she only sees you as a best friend. This confession has led to a significant emotional distance between you two, which you responded to by acting cold and distant. In the midst of this tension, your wife revealed during a couples therapy session that she is no longer in love with you and has been harboring resentment towards you, primarily stemming from the time you both invest in raising your children rather than nurturing your relationship. Over the years, particularly in the last 3, your wife has struggled with intimacy and connection, indicating that her focus has shifted entirely towards your children, ages 12 and 14. She expressed feelings of frustration and a sense of loss regarding her friendships and social life, highlighting that the responsibilities of parenting have taken a toll on her emotional well-being. Despite the children being a source of joy, she feels that the sacrifices made in her personal life have led to a sense of isolation and disconnection. During therapy, it became clear that she often frames her frustrations through the lens of motherhood, which has made it difficult for her to articulate feelings about her own needs and desires. When you probed her feelings further, she acknowledged her resentment towards you, not for directly parenting, but for the circumstances surrounding becoming parents at such a young age, which she recognizes as unreasonable yet still struggles with emotionally. After a session, your wife came home intoxicated and sought intimacy, which you initially resisted but ultimately agreed to. The next day, she once again felt disgusted and reiterated that she doesn't want to sleep with friends. This pattern of push and pull has led to deep-seated confusion and frustration for both of you. In a heart-to-heart conversation, your wife communicated that she wants companionship and is comfortable with the idea of a co-parenting, roommate-style dynamic rather than an intimate relationship. She admitted to feeling overwhelmed by the responsibilities of motherhood and how this has affected her connection to you. While she professes to love you, it has become clear that this love does not extend into the romantic or intimate realms. You've taken steps to confront these issues directly, making it clear to her that you won't settle for a relationship that lacks mutual effort and intimacy. You've expressed your commitment to the marriage, but have also set boundaries about your needs. You stress that you are not willing to be in a relationship where your efforts aren't reciprocated, which led to tears and a very somber conclusion to your session. Determined to change the dynamic, you began implementing a 180 strategy, which focuses on self-care and emotional distance. This shift was challenging for you since you still have deep feelings for your wife, but you felt it necessary to break the cycle of dependency and the current roommate dynamic. You informed her that moving forward, you would be focusing on yourself and would honor the arrangement she proposed, without reproach or emotional involvement. As you maintained this new stance, your wife began to show signs of distress and confusion over your change in behavior. Rather than responding to her emotions with nurturing gestures, you opted to stand firm in your new approach, which led to her crying and expressing concern over your indifference. You made it clear that this emotional distance was a response to the dynamic she had chosen. After a week of this 180 approach, you've noticed some shifts in her behavior, suggesting she might be beginning to recognize your value beyond just being a co-parent and friend. You also communicated about the bills and household responsibilities, underscoring that you are taking care of your own needs. The situation remains complex and fraught with emotional challenges, but it seems like you are both in a critical phase of reevaluating your relationship, your individual identities, and what it means to coexist as partners in life and parenting. Your willingness to confront these issues and seek clarity through therapy is a vital step in navigating this tumultuous period. The conversation began when I proposed that we separate our financial responsibilities equally, dividing everything 50-50ths. My suggestion seemed to catch her off guard, as she reacted strongly and expressed that it felt unexpected. In response, I reminded her that in friendships, sharing costs equally is a common expectation, and as her partner, I felt it was only fair to hold the same standard in our relationship. This moment was quite revealing for me. It highlighted how much I had been taken for granted, and how her comfort and convenience often came at my expense. Despite her initial reaction, I stood firm and explained that this new arrangement was necessary and fair, considering that if she were managing everything alone, she would have to bear the entire financial burden. This shift in our dynamic opened my eyes to several issues within our marriage, and although it has been a challenging journey, I pushed through. Since implementing these changes, I've noticed a shift in our relationship. While it's still a difficult situation for me, I see a spark of new energy and effort from her side. She has started reaching out to talk more often, and I find it challenging to refuse these interactions, especially when they seem genuine. This renewed communication gives me hope that if our relationship continues to improve, we can rebuild our connection. Additionally, I've observed that she is starting to prioritize herself more, which is significant given that she had neglected her own needs for years. This shift in her behavior is encouraging, and I truly appreciate seeing her rediscover her identity outside of her role as a mother. I hope that as we both work on our individual issues, it will lead to an overall improvement in our marriage. At this point, the outcome remains uncertain, but we are maintaining a cordial and amicable relationship, which I view as a positive sign. I have established clear boundaries, and our expectations are more defined than they were before. Regardless of where this journey leads us, I feel a sense of peace about what has transpired. We have also committed to continuing couples therapy, as I believe having an unbiased third party can help guide us through this process, whether it results in rekindling our marriage or ultimately deciding on a divorce. I want to emphasize that I will always love my wife, but I cannot continue in a marriage devoid of intimacy, as we both deserve better. As of now, we are about 9 weeks into the new approach I adopted. I am beginning to see some positive responses from my wife. A pivotal moment occurred over Memorial Day weekend when she asked me if I wanted to go out for coffee to discuss something important. This was a significant shift because it had been a long time since she initiated a serious conversation with me. Admittedly, I felt nervous and my mind raced with various scenarios about what she wanted to discuss. However, I agreed, and we took some time away from the kids to have a conversation at a nearby coffee shop. This discussion turned out to be very constructive, providing me with valuable insights into her emotional and mental state. We identified the core issues affecting our relationship, and she expressed her desire for my help, which felt like a breakthrough after years of her emotional absence. Hearing her sincere request for support filled me with excitement. After she shared her thoughts, I proposed a plan I had been considering. It felt like the right moment to introduce this plan, as it directly connected to her request for assistance. During our conversation, I made sure to acknowledge her feelings and concerns, emphasizing that they were valid and important. I expressed my care for her emotional well-being and reiterated my commitment to reconciling and returning to the loving partnership we once shared. I assured her that my love for her remained strong, and perhaps even stronger than when we first married. As we continued the dialogue, I explained my own feelings regarding the situation and how her actions had impacted my daily life. I clarified that my recent distance and emotional withdrawal were not personal attacks against her, but rather a means of self-protection from ongoing rejection and disappointment. This acknowledgement was a vital part of the conversation, and led us to discuss the theme of self-accountability. I shared that I had often focused on her happiness and tried to fulfill her desires, only to face continual rejection. This ongoing cycle of effort met with disappointment had placed a heavy emotional burden on me, causing significant stress. After reflecting on my personal journey, I recognized the necessity of making changes for myself. I realized that the only person I can control is myself, and I wanted to implement new habits and routines that would help me grow while still fulfilling our shared responsibilities, including parenting, managing finances, and daily living activities. I explained to my partner that my goal is to continue improving myself as a husband and father, learning more and becoming healthier. During our conversation, which lasted about 3 hours, my partner was very receptive to my thoughts. She expressed that she has noticed the changes I've been making and felt proud of my progress. She also shared her feelings of being left behind and acknowledged that many of the issues affecting her negatively stem from her own choices. As we discussed our relationship, A spirit of reconciliation filled the room. I made it clear that my ultimate goal is to make our relationship work, but I emphasized that I couldn't continue living under the current circumstances. Together, we established several key points to guide our path forward. We both realized that we are responsible for our own happiness. This means that neither of us is responsible for making the other person happy. We each need to seek out what that happiness looks like individually. While we are encouraged to include each other in our personal journeys, it is not required. We acknowledge that we are in control of our own lives and the paths we choose to take, meaning we must also be responsible for finding the necessary resources to grow, change, and heal. We agreed that while we could help one another when assistance is requested, unsolicited advice or help would not be given. This agreement ensures that our communication is clear and nothing is left unspoken. We recognize that if an issue was not brought up or discussed, it effectively didn't happen. We committed to taking ownership of our communication failures. To give us both a clear direction in meeting each other's needs, we decided to make a list of our wants and needs. This list would serve as a guide rather than a checklist for accountability. We agreed that we wouldn't bring up this list in a confrontational way, but rather use it as a tool for growth and transparency. It was important to us that we did not engage in actions for each other merely to check a box. Instead, we wanted to engage in these actions because we genuinely care for each other. To ensure that we create long-term habits rather than short-term fixes, we set a deadline of Memorial Day 2025 for evaluating our lives and progress. We agreed to assess our happiness at that time, understanding that if we were not happy, we would move toward divorce. In such a scenario, we both would assume full responsibility for what led to that outcome. For example, if needs were not met, it would signify that the other person chose not to address them. This approach places full accountability on each of us in all aspects of our relationship. We recognize that if our needs were unmet, we needed to ask ourselves if we had done everything possible to address the issue. If the answer was yes, we could move forward with a clear conscience, knowing we left no stone unturned. Conversely, if we had not taken the necessary steps, it would imply that the issue was not important enough to either of us. A crucial takeaway from our discussion was that our motivation for change should come from within ourselves. By focusing on our personal growth, we hope to see beneficial changes in our relationship. We committed to doing things for each other out of love and a desire to make each other happy, rather than feeling obligated. By the end of our conversation, which included many tears and hugs, we felt positive and productive about our path forward. This openness was a new experience for us, and I attribute this change to the 180 method I've been using. However, I decided to shift my focus and move away from this method. I plan to devote myself not only to my growth, but also to understanding and supporting my partner's needs because I genuinely want her to be happy by my side. My partner agreed to do the same for herself. We concluded that we would help and uplift each other when requested, approaching this journey as a team. Since this conversation, I have noticed significant changes in her behavior. She has committed to therapy and is taking antidepressants, which seem to be improving her mood and confidence. We have also begun to explore intimacy in various forms, such as physical touch and words of affirmation, strengthening our connection in meaningful ways.